Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing The Last of Us Episode 5 titled Endure and Survive. But before we review the episode, I just wanted to give a big heartfelt thank you to you guys. We've hit 50 subscribers. Now I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a big number for me. I started this channel really about a month ago and wasn't expecting any sort of growth for a while. This just means so much, and I'm really starting to see likes and comments from you guys and getting to engage with you all. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to hit new milestones. Next stop, 100. So with that being said, please leave a like and comment down below. I'm sure I'm going to read all of them and respond. I really want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So without further ado, let's talk about what happened in this episode of The Last of Us. This episode starts with kind of a flashback similar to the other episodes, but this time we see the point of view of the Hunters. The Hunters have overthrown all the Fedra soldiers, and we see this coup, this overtaking of their government, and a lot of violence. And we see Henry and Sam, the characters we met at the end of the last episode, hiding from them. Now, the Hunters are doing terrible things to the Fedra soldiers, and we get a sense that maybe they aren't as good as they think they are. And this episode dives into that a lot more. We then meet up with Kathleen, who is the leader of the Hunters, and she's interrogating all of these former Fedra soldiers / informants, and she's threatening to get rid of them if they don't give information on where Henry and Sam are. Now, Kevon Woodard and Lamar Johnson put on such amazing performances as Sam and Henry, and I was so floored by this. I loved it even more than the game, and they made some changes that I was actually super fond of. In the game, Sam is a young kid who is the younger brother of Henry. Now, this is the same in the show. However, in the show, Sam is actually deaf. This added a whole nother layer to the characters, and I thought it was a really positive change that deepened the story even more. We see Sam and Henry hiding out with a guy who we actually know from a previous episode. He was the guy that Kathleen was interrogating, and we finally know why she was interrogating him, because he knew where Sam and Henry were hiding out. One of the main themes of this episode is fear. Sam asks Henry multiple times, "Are you scared? You don't look scared. How do you feel?" Now, Henry, as the older brother, just really needs to put on this superhero persona to make sure his little brother isn't scared, and he needs to stand up for him and make sure that he knows everything will be okay. We then get a really cool intercut of the events that happened last episode intertwining with what's happening in this one. We hear shots fired, and Henry looks out the window to see Joel hunting down the Hunters. Now, this explains why Henry and Sam do not eliminate Joel and Ellie when they meet them at the end of the last episode. Because the enemy of your enemy is your friend. Joel and Ellie are pretty apprehensive about Henry and Sam at the beginning, but they slowly form this relationship that turns into something greater throughout the episode. Again, Joel doesn't trust anybody, but we're starting to see him care for Ellie more and actually protect her as a father figure rather than just cargo. Henry devises a plan to get them out of the city, and Joel obliges eventually. They realize that they have to work together in order for all of them to be safe and escape these Hunters and the infected. However, they say there's no infected in the city, but we know that's not true. While they're traveling through the city, they end up having to go through this sewer section / tunnel section, which is really familiar from the game. We get a cool Easter egg towards one of the side characters that we met in the notes in the video game, and this guy is Ish. Ish was a person who really left us all these notes in the first game, and we got to see his journey continue. And there's a really crazy part where we see him living with all of these people underground, and we find out how all of these people got infected. They don't really dive into it much in the show, but I'm glad that they at least referenced it. Sometimes I felt like they were rushing the Henry and Sam and Joel and Ellie relationship thing, but I realized it's a show, so they're gonna have to cut things out and only leave room for the super important things, which they did. So they're underground in this kind of children's daycare area. It looks like there's toys, there's a jungle gym, there's soccer, everything that a child would want during an outbreak, and it seems like these people had somewhat of a normal life while still living underground during the infection. It's at this point where we really see these amazing moments between Ellie and Sam, where she's telling him that you shouldn't be afraid, that you should try and live like a child a little bit more, and it was super sweet. My favorite part about this moment was actually seeing Henry and Joel sit back and talk to each other. It reminded me of like parents at a soccer game or at a soccer practice or any sports practice. They were watching their kids play and have fun while they're talking about more serious matters, and all they want is for them to be happy. We find out the reason that they're actually being hunted, and it's because Henry killed Kathleen, the leader of the Hunters' brother. We find out this devastating story about Sam and how he was going to die to leukemia, and how Henry saved his life at the expense of Kathleen's brother. This added a much needed depth to the character that we didn't get in the game, and I'm really glad that they did this. This episode was amazing, but there was one thing I really wish that they put in here from the game that they actually didn't put in the show. In the game, we see Ellie give Sam this toy, and Henry says to Sam, "Put that back, we don't need it. We only put things in our backpack that we need to survive," and Sam ends up putting the toy back, and Ellie takes it and gives it to him later on. This doesn't happen in the show, but they kind of replaced the toy robot that's in the game with this homemade Etch-a-Sketch thing, and I thought it was really cool because it serves as the communication device for Sam, and it just plays a huge part in the episode as a whole. Henry and Joel are talking, and we see Joel pondering all of the things that Henry is talking about. He's talking about trying to be a protector, trying to be a bigger brother, trying to set the right example, realizing as the protector, we have to do things that we don't like, and we end up being the bad guy sometimes, but we do it for the ones we love and the ones we care about. Now, while Henry is saying all of these things, we see Joel, but he's not saying anything. We're really just able to dig into his expressionless face and realize he's thinking about what is actually going on here and this relationship that he's forming with Ellie. I've just loved so much what they've done with these side characters. I mean, these characters were cool and important in the game, but what the show has done to elevate them to another level is unheard of, and I'm so grateful that they did it. Henry and Sam are pretty much a mirror image of Ellie and Joel, and they really serve as characters that elevate Ellie and Joel's relationship to the next level. We then cut over to Kathleen and her henchman Perry having a discussion, and they did something really interesting. They started to try and humanize Kathleen. Now, clearly she's out of her mind and she's killing people, and this is terrible, and Perry doesn't honestly seem to agree with her most of the time, but he does it because he understands how she feels. But she's in her childhood home, and she tries to justify all the things that she's done, and how it doesn't matter what is right and wrong, but the only thing that matters is justice. She's kind of blinded by this whole revenge thing, and I was thinking about how, spoiler alert for part 2, how Ellie goes on this journey of revenge and how it can consume you and take over your whole life. Kathleen's getting desperate, and she wants to hunt down Henry and Sam, so she decides to get everybody together and go after them, even though there's something in the area that isn't terribly safe. We learned earlier in the episode that when the infection happened, all of them were pushed underground by Fedra. So underground in all the tunnels, infected are there. Now at this point, we get one of my favorite parts from the game. This was such a fun part to play in the game, and I was really interested to see how they would do it in the show, and honestly, they did it better. The first big change that they did to this scene was make it at nighttime. I thought it was so much scarier, I thought it was more intense, and I thought it gave more realism to the fact that these people are going to be shooting at Joel and Ellie but missing every time. Now in the game, you play as Joel and you take out this sniper and then you aim down on Ellie, Sam, and Henry and protect them from infected soldiers, etc. This is the same thing that happens in the show, but they changed it up a little bit with how the soldiers arrive and how the infected play a role into it. We get this kind of standoff between Kathleen and Henry, and for a moment I really thought they were going to change the story, and it made me mad because Kathleen points a gun at Henry. Man, people would have been so mad if they had changed that, and I would have been mad too. But at that moment, we see one of their crash cars crumble underground, and we see the tunnel area open up, and we hear all these sounds of infected. I knew it was going to happen again, but it was so scary, and I actually had anxiety watching this. The infected pour out like World War Z zombies, and they start taking over everybody. It was just pure chaos, and then out of nowhere we see the bloater for the first time, and it looked so good. Just this stumbling giant monster that's bulletproof because of how hardened the fungus is. It was so crazy and posed a huge threat. Perry, played by Jeffrey Pierce, who voiced Tommy in the game, tries to protect Kathleen from the bloater, shooting all of his rounds into it, but it's doing nothing, and we get the death animation for Perry that we've seen every time you die to a bloater in the game, where it kind of takes your jaw and does its business. We get this huge montage of infected taking over people, and the clickers and the infected, they all looked so good. It was a super nice mix between CG and real actors. I thought it was so good how they pulled that off, and once again in the dark, so it was more realistic and we didn't kind of see behind the curtain too much. This was the infected moment that I was really looking forward to in the show, and it exceeded my expectations. Henry and Sam and Ellie kind of get caught by the infected, and Joel kind of has to shoot them off from them from a distance, and we see how this plays out later on. But anyway, by some miracle, they survive, and they all meet up, and they escape safely. They go to this motel for the night, and Henry and Sam decide, okay, we're going to come with you guys to Jackson, Wyoming, because we trust you, you've saved our lives, and we owe you that at least. And Joel is actually receptive to this. He's the one who actually invites them, and this is the first time we see any really compassion for this character in the show. Now, I think the biggest change of this episode happens at this point. Sam and Ellie are getting ready to go to bed, and they're sleeping in one room, and Joel and Henry are sleeping in kind of the main living area. Henry shuts the door, Sam grabs his little Etch-a-Sketch thing, writes on it, and we get this really meaningful silent dialogue between Sam and Ellie that wasn't in the game at all, because originally Sam goes to bed alone. He once again brings up the question of fear. You know, why aren't you scared? You never look scared. And Ellie tells him, I am scared. I don't want to end up alone. I hate the fact that I could end up alone one day. But Ellie just reassures this kid that, hey, everything's going to be fine. You know, I'm here for you, etc. Sam lifts up his pant leg, and we find out that he did get bit during the onslaught of the infected. Ellie doesn't really know what to do, and in the game we actually don't find out that Sam is infected until the next morning. But here we see Ellie try something. Ellie tries to use her blood to save him, and obviously we know it's not going to work, but this was the first time we see Ellie trying to use herself for good, for the better of humanity. Now this is another point where Sam being deaf has a huge implication on the story, and I think it adds so much more. Sam writes to Ellie, "Will you stay with me all night?" And Ellie says, "Of course." Now it's at this point where tears started flowing, and you realize what's going to happen next, but you didn't realize how the show was going to play it out, because you've seen the story in the game. We know what happens in the game, but they're doing this and executing it so well and so different still that it's like it's the first time you're seeing it. Ellie wakes up, she turns and she sees Sam sitting on the bed, just staring into the distance. Now since Sam is deaf, he actually can't hear anything, therefore he didn't attack Ellie when he turned. We see Ellie tap his shoulder, we realize the infection has taken him over, and they start fighting. Henry and Joel wake up, they see what's happening, and Henry grabs a gun and does the hardest thing that I can imagine anyone could do. He puts his brother down and starts having this panic attack, wondering, what has he done? He says to himself, what did I do? What did I do? And then he sees that there's only one easy way out of this. He can't take it, and he tragically takes his own life. The scene was just so abrupt, but I feel like it adds to the intensity of it and how things can change like that. Also, Ellie's reaction to seeing this, just the raw emotion of Bella Ramsey performing in this scene was so real, so scary, and just made me shake. We flash forward to them burying Henry and Sam, and we realize the words that Henry said to Joel have stuck with him, and we realize that Henry is sort of a martyr for Joel. He's going to live by those words that Henry said to him and take Ellie as one of his own. We see them walk off into the distance, and the episode ends. Now, this was just such a great episode of television. This show has elevated the bar every single week, and I am so grateful that we actually have this show. Every time the show comes on and I see this intro with the song playing, and every time the music plays, I just get a huge grin and smile on my face, because I cannot believe that this show actually even exists. I played this game 10 years ago, and the story affected me so much, and I remember it piece by piece every single time I play it and talk about it. But to see it in live action, it's so surreal. I thought this episode was fantastic, and the performances, again, were top notch. We got emotion, we got the infected, we got the enemies, we got the fighting, we got it all. I really cannot wait to see next week. I know we're going to probably go to Wyoming, and we're going to see the reunion between Tommy and Joel, and hopefully that leads us into one of our main antagonists of the series, which is David. And if they even do half as good with David as they have with all of these side characters like Frank and Bill, Henry and Sam, etc., this show is just going to go down as one of the most faithful and well-received adaptations of all time, and I am here for it. This episode, again, just started making me think. I remember playing the game and having to think about the things that happened in my mind and thinking of the moral decisions that were being made and the choices that the characters had to make. And this show is doing the same thing. Like I said, it's like I haven't seen this story before. They're doing it just different enough to where it's fresh in my mind. Not as if I'm seeing a rerun of something, but I'm seeing something brand new. This show just keeps blowing my mind, and I am so happy that this is going over so well with fans of the series and fans of the game who are coming together and actually loving both. It's awesome. It's mind-blowing. Now, some people might not like some of the changes that they made, but honestly, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have the game. If you like the game more, go play the game. If you like the show, watch the show. If you like both, like I do, you can do both. And I feel like that's just so great. You're kind of uniting the fandom again. I give this episode another 10 out of 10. Maybe I'm biased because I love the story so much, but just the emotional impact that this show has had so far has shown the audience that a post-apocalyptic world is not sunshine and rainbows at all, and things can change like that, and we don't know what is going to happen. Guys, if you could please leave a like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. But most importantly, I want to see you guys' comments down below. I really want to know what you thought about this episode and where you think this show is going to go next. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What didn't you like? What did you like? Please let me know. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one, and I hope you have a good one.